Once we have done our scientific research and we've looked at our data and organized our data, we're probably going to make some kind of decision regarding that data. Now, it could be a big nationwide decision or even worldwide decision about how we should perhaps curb our carbon emissions, or it could be a decision that you make personally inside your home, like how much water you're going to use or whether or not you should install a new energy-saving appliance. When you make that decision, you want to make that decision based on research, based on data. However, you do also need to consider a bunch of other things, such as how will this decision affect other people's lives? How much will it cost? Is it ethical? Yes, Energy Star appliances are a better decision, but should you rip out a 5-year-old dishwasher to put in a brand new dishwasher? Not necessarily, especially if that 5-year-old dishwasher ends up taking up space in a landfill and you have to use a whole bunch of parts to make a new one. So just making the decision based off of one piece of information alone is not going to help. You have to examine all the issues or all the parts surrounding an issue, as well as the values. Now, values are principles or standards that we consider to be important. For some, maybe energy savings is important. For others, maybe saving landfill space is important. And that's totally fine. Everyone has their own set of values. So here's a little table, and write this table in your notebook, of different values that we may encounter when we're making environmental decisions. One is aesthetic. Is it beautiful? Is it pleasing? You know, wind energy has kind of taken a hit in the last several years because wind farms are quite frankly ugly, especially since you're putting wind in areas where you normally have big open landscapes, views of mountains, lots of scenery, and suddenly there's big windmills in the way. So if your value is aesthetic, maybe you're anti-wind energy. Economic, money, the gain or loss of money, or even the jobs that get people money. There are economic benefits to wind farms as well as economic benefits to not having wind farms. Is it cheaper, or is the cost of the actual wind turbine a detriment there? Environmental values, that's the protection of our natural resources. Wind energy, some may support wind energy for environmental reasons, not having to use fossil fuels. You can use naturally occurring wind energy instead. Educational values, especially with some studies that involve, trapping and studying animals, or maybe our zoos. Those can come under some fire, but have an educational value to them. We accumulate knowledge and we share that knowledge with people that otherwise wouldn't know that much about the animals that are in zoos or that are being trapped and studied. There's ethical and moral values, what we consider to be right and wrong. There's health values, the maintenance of our human health. Is this, you may be against pollution because it makes people have asthma and allergies. There's all kinds of different reasons to be for or against something. Recreational, leisure activities, a lot of the national parks are valued for their recreation as well as for their preservation of our natural resources. Scientific, which is an understanding of the natural world. What are we gaining from studying this or from preserving it? And then social cultural values, maintaining those human communities and their values and their traditions. You notice the Keystone Pipeline came under fire protest from not only environmental reasons, but also the social cultural reasons of having that pipeline go through what was Native American lands there. So lots of different values and lots of ways to approach an issue. A lot of times when there's a big debate going on, the debate, if you kind of boil it down to the issue of why one side versus another, is we're approaching it from different sets of values. Like I was talking about the wind energy thing. Some are approaching it from an environmental standpoint where we're not using fossil fuels. Others are maybe against it because of aesthetic or economic issues. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we hate each other and we're bad people. It's that we're approaching the issue with different sets of values that are being considered at that point. Now, once we look at all the data and we've considered our values, we make some kind of opinion about that issue, We've got to decide what's important. We've got to figure out what to do about it. Do we support it? Do we not? Do we pay for it? Do we enforce it with a policy? So to go through all this, we go through what's called a decision-making model, and that gives us a systematic process for making a decision. Again, whether it's a big political decision or whether it's a personal decision in your home. So you first want to gather that information, like we talked about in the first two sections. Gather that information, consider the values. Based on the data, does this align with my values, whether it's economic or aesthetic or whatever? Explore the consequences. Consequences being, well, what happens if I do this? Well, what happens if I don't do this? What are the consequences? Maybe it's a cost-benefit thing. Maybe, yes, we're saving a lot of fossil fuels, but we're also using a whole lot of materials and fossil fuels and shipping these things out to where they're being installed. So explore those consequences. And then finally, with the consequences considered, make your decision. So that is how scientists and policymakers work, how they, or hopefully work, how they collect data, how they organize and analyze that data, and then based on that data and their value set, how they make a decision about our environmental policies and our behaviors. So that is it for how scientists work. We will finish this unit and then move on to how the world works.